What happens when the dream turns into a nightmare? When the ultimate symbols of success, sprawling mansions dripping with gold and marble, are left to rot in silence? What kind of secrets, scandals, or tragedies could force a billionaire to walk away from their own private kingdom, leaving millions of dollars to crumble into dust? We're about to unlock the gates and expose the chilling real stories behind the world's most spectacular abandoned billionaire mansions. The house of humble beginnings and brutal endings. Let's kick things off not with a billionaire, but with a man who knocked them out for a living and then, almost overnight, had more money than he knew what to do with. I'm talking about Iron Mike Tyson. In the late 1980s, Tyson was the most feared man on the planet, the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, and was raking in tens of millions of dollars per fight. So, what's the first thing you do when you go from the streets of Brooklyn to global superstardom? You buy a palace, of course. In 1989, Tyson dropped just $300,000 on a sprawling 25,000 square foot mansion in Southington, Ohio. Now, that price sounds like a steal, but this was a property he bought from a recently indicted local businessman, so it was a bit of a distressed asset. Tyson then proceeded to pour millions into turning it into the most absurdly over-the-top bachelor pad imaginable. We're talking about 5 bedrooms, multiple jacuzzis, crystal chandeliers everywhere, and a swimming pool so massive it looked like it was designed for Olympic trials. But the real Tyson touches were in the details. The gates were wrought iron, proudly displaying his name. The carpets were zebra print. And the crown jewel? A bathroom decked out in 24-karat gold fixtures. Even the bathtub was rumored to be pure gold, a purchase that reportedly set him back a cool $2 million. This wasn't just a house. It was a monument to 80s excess, a place where a guy who once had nothing could literally bathe in his own wealth. But here's the thing about monuments. They often commemorate things that are over. Tyson's reign, both in the ring and as a financial powerhouse, was notoriously turbulent. By the late 90s, his life was spiraling. A shock loss to Buster Douglas, a prison sentence, and a spending habit that would make royalty blush, think Siberian tigers as pets, and a multi-million-dollar bill for a flock of pigeons, were all taking their toll. By 1999, the Ohio mansion, once the site of legendary parties, was empty. Tyson, drowning in debt and legal troubles that would eventually lead to a 2003 bankruptcy filing despite earning over $400 million in his career, was forced to sell. He offloaded the property for $1.3 million to a tech entrepreneur, who then also struggled to maintain it. For years, the mansion sat abandoned, a ghost of its former glory. Urban explorers would sneak in, capturing haunting images of the cavernous, empty rooms. The gold-plated bathroom was stripped, the massive pool became a murky swamp, and the once vibrant party palace decayed into a sad, graffiti-scarred shell. It was a perfect, heartbreaking metaphor for Tyson's own fall from grace, a powerful champion left broken and alone. But the story has a surprisingly positive twist. In 2014, the property was purchased by a church, and today, after extensive renovations, the former site of Tyson's gold-plated excess is a place of worship and community gathering. Talk about a heavyweight redemption. The king's crumbling Costa del Sol kingdom. From a king of the ring to an actual king. When you're the ruler of a nation sitting on top of the world's largest oil reserves, your idea of a summer home is a little different from a cottage by the sea. For the late King Fahd of Saudi Arabia, a vacation meant building a palace that was basically a smaller, more exclusive version of the White House on Spain's glamorous Costa del Sol. Welcome to the Palacio Al Riyadh, a sprawling, marble-clad estate in the hills above Marbella. Built in the 1980s, this wasn't just a mansion, it was a compound. It's an exact replica of the White House, only bigger, flanked by several other opulent villas for his extensive entourage, a private clinic, and its own mosque. When the king and his 3,000-person entourage would roll into town for their annual summer getaway, it was an economic event. They would reportedly spend an estimated $5 million a day in the local economy, buying everything from jewelry to fleets of luxury cars. The palace itself was the stuff of legend. We're talking about helipads, swimming pools that could rival a resort's, and acres of pristine gardens. But after King Fahd's death in 2005, the laughter and lavish parties stopped. The sprawling estate fell silent. For nearly 2 decades, this monument to oil wealth has been slowly surrendering to nature. The crisp white marble is now stained and cracked. The once manicured gardens are a jungle, and the massive swimming pools are green and stagnant. The estate, estimated to be worth well over $300 million, even in its decaying state, sits in a kind of legal and diplomatic limbo. Maintained by a skeleton crew, it's a ghostly presence overlooking the sun-drenched coast, a powerful reminder that even royal fortunes and dynastic power can't stop the inevitable creep of time and decay. The sheer cost of upkeep, easily millions per year, makes it a financial black hole, a problem that even a royal family with a net worth estimated in the trillions seems content to ignore for now. It stands as a silent, sun-bleached monument to a bygone era of unimaginable Saudi extravagance. The Playboy Prince and the Palace of Pleasure. If King Fahd's palace was a symbol of stately royal power, our next stop is a testament to what happens when a prince with an unlimited budget and zero self-control decides to build the ultimate party palace. Let me introduce you to Prince Jeffrey Bolkiah of Brunei, the infamous Playboy Prince. As the finance minister for his brother, the Sultan of Brunei, Prince Jeffrey had access to the country's colossal oil wealth, and he treated the national treasury like his own personal piggy bank. Over a decade, he allegedly funneled an eye-watering $14.8 billion into his own accounts. And what did he spend it on? Well, alongside a fleet of 2,000 cars, private jets, and a yacht named Tits, he built mansions. Lots of them. But his masterpiece of hedonism was Sutton Place, a historic 16th-century manor in Surrey, England, that he bought in the 1990s. He didn't just buy the house, he bought the entire 700-acre estate and proceeded to modernize it in the most spectacularly tacky way imaginable. He built a 9-hole golf course, a polo field, and, most notoriously, a private erotic art collection that included life-sized, anatomically correct statues of himself and his then-fiancée. He also installed a nightclub, a cinema, and a series of guest houses specifically for his harem. This was a place built for pure, unadulterated indulgence. But the party came to a screeching halt in the late 90s when the Asian financial crisis exposed the black hole in Brunei's finances. The Sultan sued his brother, a massive legal battle ensued, and Prince Jeffrey was accused of embezzling billions. He was forced to hand over his assets, including the now infamous Sutton Place. The estate, once pulsing with scandalous energy, was abandoned. For years, it sat empty, a monument to greed and excess. The erotic statues were removed, the polo ponies were sold, and the pleasure palace fell silent. It was eventually sold for a fraction of its former value, but the stories of what went on behind those ancient walls have become the stuff of legend. It's a perfect example of how a place of immense historical significance can be transformed into a billionaire's tacky playground, only to be left behind as a silent witness when the stolen money finally runs out. The Baron's Cursed Castle. If a tacky pleasure palace is one way to ruin a historic manor, our next stop shows how history can be undone by a single, catastrophic moment. Welcome to the Château de la Mothe Chandonnières in France, a castle that looks like it was pulled directly out of a Disney movie and then left to be swallowed by a haunted forest. Its story is one of aristocratic pride, devastating fire, and centuries of neglect. With origins stretching back to the 13th century, the chateau was a seat of nobility for generations. In the 19th century, it was bought by a wealthy French nobleman who undertook a massive, romantic-style renovation, adding the dramatic towers, moat, and ornate facade that give it its fairy tale appearance today. For a brief period, it was a center of lavish parties and high society. But in 1932, disaster struck. A catastrophic fire tore through the castle, destroying its priceless interiors, a rare library of ancient books, and centuries of history. The owner at the time was financially ruined by the blaze. After that, the castle was sold to a businessman who couldn't afford its upkeep, and it began its long, slow descent into one of the world's most beautiful ruins. For over 80 years, the Château de la Mothe Chandonnières was abandoned. Nature didn't just reclaim it, it consumed it. Massive trees grew inside its roofless halls, their branches stretching out through the empty stone windows. The moat, once a symbol of beauty, became a wild, overgrown swamp. But the story has a modern, crowd-funded twist. In 2017, a French conservation company launched a campaign allowing people to co-purchase the castle for as little as €50. Nearly 25,000 people from 115 countries became co-owners, collectively saving the ruin from total collapse. It now stands as a unique symbol, not of a single billionaire's dream, but of a shared global effort to keep a fairy tale from vanishing completely. The Ghost Tower of Bangkok. Sometimes, a mansion isn't abandoned because of one person's downfall, but because of an entire continent's. Welcome to the Sathorn Unique Tower in Bangkok. This isn't just a house, it's a 49-story ghost of a dream. In the booming 90s, this skyscraper was destined to be one of Asia's most luxurious addresses, a gleaming testament to Thailand's tiger economy. It was set to feature over 600 high-end residential condos and shops, with ornate balconies and sweeping views of the Chao Phraya River. But in 1997, the dream collapsed. The Asian financial crisis hit Thailand like a tsunami, freezing credit markets and bankrupting developers overnight. Construction on the Sathorn Unique, which was already 80% complete, stopped dead. The cranes fell silent, the workers went home, and the tower was left to face the elements, an instant ruin. For over 2 decades, it has loomed over the Bangkok skyline, its concrete skeleton exposed, its grand balconies crumbling. It became a magnet for urban explorers and a chilling vertical symbol of financial apocalypse. The building's developer faced a separate, protracted legal battle, further complicating any chance of revival. The tower stands as a multi-million-dollar tombstone for a bygone era of ambition, a powerful reminder that sometimes the grandest plans can be brought down not by a single person's hubris, but by the invisible, devastating force of a global economic collapse. The visionary's forgotten palace. Not every abandoned mansion is a monument to scandal. Some are simply the casualties of a dream that was too big to sustain. Let's travel back to the roaring 20s, to the sun-drenched shores of Miami Beach. The man of the hour is Carl Fisher, a visionary entrepreneur who almost single-handedly dredged a swampy mangrove island out of the sea and transformed it into one of the world's most glamorous destinations. Fisher was a genius promoter and a millionaire industrialist who co-founded the Indy 500. When he set his sights on Florida, he didn't just build houses, he built a lifestyle. And at the heart of his new kingdom was his own spectacular mansion, the Towers. Completed in 1925, this was a jaw-dropping 16,000 square foot waterfront estate. It was a masterpiece of Spanish-style architecture, boasting a grand ballroom, a rooftop terrace with sweeping views of the bay, and even its own private docks for his fleet of yachts. This was the unofficial capital of Miami Beach, the site of legendary parties where Fisher entertained presidents, industrialists like the Vanderbilts, and Hollywood stars. He even famously kept a baby elephant, Rosie, on the property as a pet and a living, breathing marketing gimmick. The Towers wasn't just a home. It was the symbol of Miami's golden age. But Fisher's golden touch didn't last forever. The 1926 Miami hurricane devastated his paradise, and the Great Depression wiped out his fortune. He lost almost everything. The man who had built a city from scratch was forced to retreat, and his beloved mansion, the Towers, was sold. For decades, the property passed through different hands, eventually being converted into a private school. But by the early 2000s, it was abandoned completely. The once gleaming jewel of Miami Beach was left to the mercy of the elements and vandals. The ornate plasterwork crumbled, the grand ballroom filled with debris, and the ghosts of jazz-age parties faded into the humid Florida air. It was a tragic end for a building that represented so much ambition and vision. It stood as a crumbling reminder that even the most brilliant dreams, built on millions of dollars, can be washed away by the tides of history and economic disaster. The coal baron's crumbling legacy. Let's travel to the heart of America's coal country, to Elkins Park, Pennsylvania, to witness the ghost of the Gilded Age, Linwood Hall. This isn't just a mansion, it's a 110-room neoclassical behemoth that was once considered America's largest and finest residence outside of a museum. Built between 1897 and 1900, this was the home of Peter A. B. Widener, an industrial tycoon who made a colossal fortune in public transit and investments with titans like J.P. Morgan. No expense was spared. The construction cost was a staggering $8 million at the time. That's over $250 million in today's money. Widener filled it with one of the most priceless private art collections in the world, featuring works by Rembrandt, Vermeer, and Donatello. This was the home of a man who didn't just want to live in luxury, he wanted to own history itself. But the Gilded Dream was built on a foundation of tragedy. Widener's eldest son and grandson died aboard the Titanic in 1912, a devastating blow that haunted the family. After Peter Widener's own death, his surviving children struggled to maintain the colossal estate, which required a live-in staff of over 100. The family's fortunes began to decline along with the industries that built them. By the 1940s, the remaining family couldn't afford to keep it. The priceless art collection was donated away, and in 1952, the estate was sold to a faith-based group for a mere $192,000. They stripped the mansion of its lavish interiors, selling off everything from French-polished wall panels to gold-plated fixtures to pay the bills. Eventually, even they couldn't sustain it, and the mansion was abandoned completely. For decades, Linwood Hall has sat empty, a hollowed-out giant, slowly succumbing to the elements. Its grand halls are now cavernous and silent, a powerful, decaying monument to the immense ambition of the Gilded Age and a stark reminder that even the largest fortunes can crumble when the industries that forged them turn to dust. The Dictator's Palace of Gold. Some palaces aren't just abandoned, they're liberated. This is Mezhihiria, the former private estate of Viktor Yanukovych, the deposed pro-Russian president of Ukraine. When he fled the country during the 2014 Revolution of Dignity, protesters and journalists stormed the gates, and what they found inside was a universe of corruption so vast and tacky, it was almost comical. This 350-acre estate wasn't just a house, it was a monument to kleptocracy. The main house was a 5-story timber palace filled with gold-plated everything. There was a private zoo with kangaroos and peacocks, a classic car collection worth millions, a Spanish galleon retrofitted as a floating restaurant, and a personal golf course. The most infamous discovery was a solid gold loaf of bread paperweight, which became the ultimate symbol of Yanukovych's detached, criminal excess while his country struggled. The sheer scale of the theft was mind-boggling, with estimates suggesting the compound cost upwards of $1 billion to build and maintain, all siphoned from the Ukrainian state. When Yanukovych fled, he left everything behind in a hurry. Documents were found hastily dumped in a lake, detailing shady deals and astronomical expenses. Today, Mezhihiria has been reclaimed by the people. It's been transformed into a public park and a museum of corruption, where Ukrainian families now stroll through the very grounds that were once a dictator's secret playground. It's a powerful symbol of revolution, a palace abandoned not to decay, but to justice. The Tyrant's Ghost Kingdom. A liberated palace in Europe is one thing, but what happens when a dictator's kingdom is built in the middle of a jungle, paid for with the blood and treasure of his nation? The answer is far more brutal. This is the story of Gabadolite, the Versailles in the jungle, the ghost kingdom of Mobutu Sese Seko, the notoriously corrupt ruler of Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo. For 32 years, Mobutu ruled with an iron fist, allegedly embezzling up to $15 billion from his impoverished country. A significant chunk of that fortune was poured into creating a lavish, surreal paradise in the remote village of his birth. Gabadolite wasn't just a palace. It was a city built for one man's ego. It featured 3 opulent palaces, including one with interiors modeled on the Hall of Mirrors, all decorated with Italian marble and filled with priceless art. He built a 5-star hotel for visiting dignitaries and an international airport with a runway long enough to land the Concorde, which he frequently chartered for shopping trips to Paris. All of this, a multi-billion-dollar fantasy, was carved out of the dense jungle while the majority of his people lived in abject poverty. But in 1997, the party ended. As rebel forces led by Laurent Kabila closed in, Mobutu fled into exile, leaving his kingdom behind. What followed was not a preservation, but a reckoning. The palaces were systematically looted by rebels and locals alike. Anything of value was stripped away. Gold fixtures, marble tiles, furniture, even the wiring from the walls. After the plunder, the jungle returned with a vengeance. For the last 25 years, the palaces of Gabadolite have been consumed by the earth, their concrete shells now strangled by vines and trees. They are a powerful, terrifying monument to the ultimate consequences of absolute power and greed, a ghost kingdom slowly being erased from the map. The Island of Unspeakable Sins. We've seen mansions abandoned due to bankruptcy, death, scandal, and dreams gone bust. But sometimes, a private paradise is abandoned for a much darker reason. Sometimes, it's not a sanctuary. It's a crime scene. And no private island in modern history is as infamous or as chilling as Little Street James, the Caribbean lair of the monstrous Jeffrey Epstein. This is where the story of Billionaire Playgrounds takes a sharp, terrifying turn into darkness. Epstein, a financier with a mysteriously acquired fortune, purchased the 72-acre island in the U.S. Virgin Islands in 1998 for a mere $7.95 million. He then bought the neighboring Great Street James Island for another $22.5 million. He proceeded to transform this slice of paradise into a high-security compound designed for one horrific purpose: to conceal his international S-Times X-trafficking ring. Locals nicknamed the Island of Sin and Pedophile Island for a reason. The architecture itself was bizarre and unsettling. The most infamous structure was a strange, blue and white striped, temple-like building with a golden dome on top. No one is quite sure what it was for. Some say a music room, others a gym, but its windowless design and imposing lockable door led to much darker speculation. There was also a complex network of roads, a helipad, a private dock, multiple guest villas, and strange life-sized statues scattered across the property. This island was the hub of Epstein's global network of abuse. His private jet, nicknamed the Lolita Express, shuttled a horrifyingly long list of powerful men, princes, politicians, tech titans, and academics to his private kingdom. Flight logs have confirmed visitors like Prince Andrew and Bill Clinton, though they have denied any knowledge of or participation in his crimes. Here, far from the prying eyes of the world, he and his powerful associates allegedly preyed on underage girls. The island was a fortress of depravity, designed with absolute secrecy in mind. After Epstein's death in his jail cell in 2019 and the conviction of his chief accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, the island sat as a decaying, haunted monument to their horrific crimes. The once manicured lawns became overgrown, the buildings fell into disrepair, and the entire place took on the aura of a modern-day ghost story. In 2023, the two islands were finally sold for $60 million to a billionaire investor. The proceeds of the sale were directed to a compensation fund for Epstein's dozens of victims. But no amount of money can ever cleanse the stain from that land. Little Street James will forever serve as the ultimate, horrifying warning. It's a reminder that the privacy and isolation that billionaires crave can be twisted and used as a shield for the most monstrous acts imaginable, proving that sometimes, when a billionaire builds their own private world, it isn't a utopia, it's a living hell.